General Hospital will reveal Trina and Kai had gradually built a relationship with a solid foundation, a connection that brought her a sense of peace she never thought she would find again after the loss of Spencer. When Kai entered her life, he was like a breath of fresh air, pulling her out of the fog of sorrow and regret. Unlike others, he didn't push her to forget the past or pressure her to move on quickly. Instead, he was simply there, listening, sharing, and making her feel that no one expected her to change unless she was truly ready. But Kai was not just a charming man with an attractive presence and kind words. He had an emotional depth that Trina couldn't ignore. He could read what she was trying to hide, understand the pain she struggled to suppress. With him, she felt like she could be herself, without pretending to be fine when, in reality, she was still battling her emotions. Kai had shifted the trajectory of her life, pulling her out of darkness and offering her hope for something new, a future that could exist without being drowned by the past. Yet, despite his calm demeanor, Trina slowly began to realize that Kai was not as carefree as he appeared. She could sense a conflict within him, a longing he had yet to release. There were moments, fleeting but undeniable, when she caught glimpses of his internal struggle in his eyes, something he wasn't ready to voice. The truth began to unfold when Trina discovered that Kai was considering an innovative medical procedure, a breakthrough surgery that could restore his football career, the very dream he had once given up on. It was an opportunity he had longed for, something he had never entirely let go of. But this chance was not just a personal choice. To undergo the procedure, he would have to face serious risks, ones that could impact not only his physical health but also his mental and emotional well-being. Trina couldn't help but worry. She understood Kai's passion for football, but she also saw the danger he was deliberately overlooking. She didn't want to be the one to stand in the way of his dreams, but she also couldn't watch him gamble everything on such an uncertain outcome. This placed them in a difficult position, a conflict that wasn't directly about their relationship but had the power to shape the future they were trying to build. Things became even more complicated when the conditions surrounding the surgery extended beyond just Kai. It pulled Trina into a world she had never wanted to be part of. There were forces watching Kai's potential return, people who might not want to see him back on the field. Suddenly, they found themselves entangled in something far bigger than just the two of them, a situation where love, trust, and even their safety could be at risk. Just as their relationship was beginning to solidify, just as Trina was starting to believe she could truly trust in a future with Kai, a new challenge emerged. She couldn't help but wonder, was their love strong enough to survive this? Or was this merely a fragile illusion, a connection that would shatter the moment external pressures began to close in? Jason had never expected to find himself drawn into Sasha's world, yet here he was, standing beside her, playing a role that neither of them had planned for. Their connection, though unconventional, had formed almost instinctively. What had started as a simple gesture of support quickly evolved into something far more complex. In the wake of her child's birth, Sasha found herself navigating a whirlwind of emotions, responsibilities, and scrutiny from those around her. Jason, ever the protector, stepped in without hesitation, offering a steady presence amidst the chaos. There was something unspoken yet deeply understood between them. Sasha, still recovering from the trauma of everything she had endured, found solace in Jason's quiet strength. He wasn't one to offer empty reassurances or pretend that everything would be fine, but his actions spoke louder than words. He shielded her from prying eyes, deflected the constant curiosity of those eager to dig into her personal life, and, most importantly, provided her with a sense of security she hadn't felt in a long time. For Jason, stepping into the role of a stand-in father wasn't entirely unfamiliar. He had once been Michael's protector, guiding him through the uncertainties of childhood while shielding him from the dangerous world they had been born into. Taking on a similar role for Sasha's child seemed almost instinctual, but there was a difference this time, one that neither of them could ignore. Unlike before, when he had been assigned the role by circumstance, this time he had willingly chosen it. Yet, as much as Jason's presence offered stability, it also introduced complications. The charade of him being the father of his nephew's child was bound to raise questions that neither he nor Sasha were prepared to answer. While some viewed Jason's involvement as an act of kindness, others couldn't help but wonder if there was something deeper at play. And with the past he carried, the weight of old enemies, and the ever-present danger that seemed to follow him, Jason couldn't ignore the reality that his presence in Sasha's life might bring risks she wasn't prepared for. For Sasha, the arrangement was both a blessing and a burden. Jason's support was invaluable, but what would happen when the truth eventually surfaced? Could she truly allow herself to rely on him, knowing that he lived in a world where permanence was never guaranteed? And for Jason, the question remained, was he stepping in to protect Sasha and her child out of duty, or was there something more stirring beneath the surface? What had started as a simple alliance was becoming something neither of them had anticipated. With the weight of secrets, the watchful eyes of those around them, and the unpredictable nature of the world they lived in, Jason and Sasha found themselves standing on uncertain ground. And as their bond deepened, one undeniable truth loomed over them: this was only the beginning of the complications to come. Jason had never been one to seek out personal entanglements, but somehow, he had found himself woven into Sasha's life in a way neither of them had anticipated. It had started as an act of protection, a way to shield her from the relentless scrutiny of those who wanted to dissect her every move. She had been through so much: loss, grief, and the overwhelming weight of public perception, leaving her vulnerable in ways she had never expected. And then there was the baby, a child caught in the storm of his mother's turbulent past and an uncertain future. At first, Jason had stepped in as a simple safeguard, a figure to help her navigate the chaos. But as time went on, the dynamic between them shifted, deepening in ways that neither of them had intended. There was an unspoken understanding between them, a silent acknowledgement of the burdens they both carried. Sasha, despite her strength, was struggling to balance motherhood, the expectations placed upon her, and the deep wounds that had yet to fully heal. Jason, though outwardly composed, had his own demons, his own regrets and responsibilities that never seemed to fade. For Jason, slipping into the role of a father figure was second nature. He had once been Michael's protector, his guiding force in the early years, when the chaos of their world threatened to consume him. He had known what it meant to step up, to be the one that a child could rely on when no one else could provide that stability. But this was different. This time, he wasn't simply assuming responsibility for someone who had been placed under his care. He was choosing to be there for Sasha and her son, actively stepping into a role that was more than just temporary. And yet, with every decision came consequences. The more time he spent at Sasha's side, the more questions arose. People were beginning to wonder. Why was Jason so invested? Why had he, of all people, chosen to attach himself to this situation? The lie, that he was the father of his own nephew's child, was meant to provide Sasha with protection, to give her space to breathe and to prevent others from prying too deeply into a delicate situation. But how long could such a deception last? How many people would accept it at face value before someone started digging? Sasha, for all her gratitude, couldn't ignore the complications that came with Jason's involvement. He was a man with a past, a name that carried weight in the darkest corners of their world. His presence alone was enough to stir whispers, to raise suspicions, and to invite danger she had never wanted to be a part of. She had fought so hard to reclaim her life, to move past the tragedies that had nearly broken her. And now, by aligning herself with Jason, even under the guise of an innocent arrangement, she was walking straight into the storm. Still, she couldn't deny the comfort he provided. Jason had a way of making the world feel safer, even when chaos loomed just beyond the surface. With him, she didn't have to pretend that she had everything figured out. She didn't have to wear the mask of strength she so often put on for the outside world. He saw through it, saw her for who she really was, and never once judged her for it. But no matter how much Jason could protect her, there were things beyond his control. His past was not one that simply disappeared. The name, Jason Morgan, carried weight, and with it came dangers that could not be ignored. The more he intertwined himself in Sasha's life, the more at risk she became. And for Jason, that was an unsettling reality. He had spent years keeping the people he cared about at a distance, knowing that his life was not one that allowed for stability or safety. Yet here he was, willingly stepping into a role that made him more vulnerable than he had been in a long time. As the days passed, the lines between truth and deception began to blur. Their arrangement had started as a necessity, but something was shifting beneath the surface. Jason wasn't just playing the part of a protector, he was becoming one. And Sasha wasn't just accepting his help, she was relying on it in a way that she hadn't relied on anyone in a long time. But at what cost? With each passing moment, their bond grew stronger, but so did the risks. The people who had always watched Jason's every move would soon begin to ask questions. The enemies he had accumulated over the years would not simply fade away. And if Sasha wasn't careful, she would find herself caught in a world she was never meant to be a part of. For Jason, the choice had always been simple: protect the people he cared about at any cost. But this time, it wasn't just about protecting Sasha from outside forces. It was about protecting her from the reality of what it meant to be close to him. Because if there was one thing Jason knew for certain, it was that nothing in his world ever came without a price. And the closer Sasha got to him, the more she risked losing everything she had fought so hard to regain. The question now was, how long could they keep pretending? How long before the truth unraveled, before the lie they had built around them collapsed under the weight of the reality they refused to face? And when that moment came, would their bond be strong enough to survive, or would it shatter, leaving them both with nothing but regret? One thing was certain: this was only the beginning. Lucky and Liz had always shared a deep connection, a love that had once defined their youth and shaped the people they became. After years apart, they found themselves drawn back together, slowly rediscovering the bond that had once seemed unbreakable. The timing felt right. Life had weathered them, taught them lessons of heartbreak, resilience, and sacrifice. Yet, despite everything, there was still something undeniable between them, an unfinished story waiting to be written. For Liz, reconnecting with Lucky felt both familiar and new. They had loved each other fiercely as teenagers, but the years apart had changed them. They were no longer the same reckless, hopeful young lovers. They had endured heartaches, betrayals, and losses, yet somehow, fate had brought them back to each other. She found herself easing into the comfort of his presence, remembering the way he made her feel safe, seen, and understood in a way no one else ever had. Lucky, too, felt the pull. After losing his wife, he had never imagined himself opening up again so soon. But with Liz, it was different. She wasn't just an old flame, she was his first love, the woman who had held his heart long before life had complicated everything. He wasn't sure if they were picking up where they left off or starting something entirely new, but either way, he knew he wasn't ready to let go this time. Just as it seemed that they were finally getting their second chance, a ghost from the past emerged, threatening to unravel everything they had begun to rebuild. Someone from their history, someone neither had expected, was about to complicate their reunion in ways they couldn't have foreseen. Rumors swirled through Port Charles, whispers of a familiar name resurfacing. For Lucky, the idea that an old love could suddenly reappear unsettled him. He had dated several women over the years, some relationships fleeting, others more impactful. Some had left without a trace, while others still lingered in town, connected to his past in ways he had tried to move beyond. Yet, this wasn't about someone he had briefly courted or a relationship that had long since faded, this was something different. Liz, too, found herself wondering. While she had loved deeply and lost more than once, there were only a handful of people who could truly shake her world if they returned. She had been married, had loved and lost, had rebuilt herself more times than she could count. But whoever was coming back wasn't just an ex, it was someone who still held enough power to challenge whatever she and Lucky were trying to rebuild. The uncertainty cast a shadow over their newfound connection. Was this a test of their strength, a challenge to prove whether their love could endure? Or was it a warning, a sign that their past would always find a way to interfere? As the days passed, the tension grew. Neither Lucky nor Liz could shake the feeling that their reunion was on borrowed time, that at any moment, the past would come knocking, demanding to be reckoned with. They had fought so hard to find their way back to each other, but would it be enough? Or was history about to repeat itself, tearing them apart once again? Whatever the answer, one thing was clear, this was far from over.